Welcome to the Empathy Stories channel, where real-life moments of kindness, courage, and connection come alive. Today, we share an unforgettable story of a young boy who, with nothing but the willingness to help, changes the course of a stranger's day and perhaps his life. Stay tuned as we journey through a moment of unexpected generosity that will leave you reflecting on the power of simple acts. David Parker adjusted his watch, frustration brewing inside him as he sped down a deserted country road. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the asphalt, and the air was heavy with the oppressive heat of midsummer. David, a man accustomed to the hum of city life and the comforts of modern conveniences, was far from his usual domain. His SUV hummed along, the only sound breaking the silence around him. He had an important business deal to finalize, a deal that could make or break his company, and time was slipping through his fingers. The road stretched endlessly ahead when a loud thump jolted him from his thoughts. The car lurched to one side, the wheel pulling hard against his grip. He let out a sharp curse, easing the vehicle to a stop on the shoulder. Dust billowed up as he opened the door and stepped out, the heat hitting him like a physical force. David crouched by the front tire, immediately spotting the issue, a flat, completely shredded along the edge. He stared at it, hands on his hips, a deep sigh escaping him. Changing a tire was not a skill he possessed. Why would it be? Someone else always handled such inconveniences in his world. He pulled out his phone instinctively, but the screen taunted him with the absence of a signal. Perfect, he muttered, standing upright and surveying his surroundings. The road was deserted, flanked on either side by open fields dotted with the occasional tree. The isolation was suffocating. He tugged at his tie, loosening it as he leaned against the hood of his car. There was no one to call, no one to help. He felt stranded in every sense of the word. As he pondered his next move, a figure appeared in the distance, emerging from the shimmering heat waves that danced above the asphalt. David squinted, shading his eyes. The figure grew closer, taking shape as a boy, likely in his early teens, dressed in a worn t-shirt and sneakers that had seen better days. The boy carried a kind of relaxed confidence that struck David as odd for someone so young and in the middle of nowhere. "Need some help, mister?" the boy called out as he approached, his voice carrying easily in the stillness. David hesitated, unsure whether to be relieved or wary. "Yeah," he replied, motioning to the car. "Flat tire. I don't know how to fix it." The boy nodded, his expression serious as he inspected the damaged wheel. "No problem. My dad showed me how to do this," he said. "You got a spare?" David blinked at the boy's nonchalant tone. "Yeah, in the back," he replied, motioning toward the trunk. The boy didn't wait for further instructions. He moved to the rear of the SUV, opened the hatch, and pulled out the spare tire and the tools with practiced ease. David watched, a mixture of surprise and embarrassment flooding through him. He was a man used to giving orders, to solving problems with a quick phone call or a swipe of his credit card. Now, here he was, relying on a teenager in dusty sneakers to bail him out. As the boy knelt by the tire, loosening the lug nuts with the wrench, David cleared his throat. "What's your name?" he asked, feeling the need to fill the silence. "Aaron," the boy replied without looking up. His hands moved with confidence, and David noticed a thin sheen of sweat forming on his forehead. "I'm David," he offered. "You live around here?" Aaron nodded. "Just down the road a bit," he said. "It's not much, but we've been there a while." David felt a pang of discomfort at the simplicity in Aaron's words. "Your dad taught you this?" "Huh?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "Yeah," Aaron said, tightening the bolts on the spare tire. "Said it's good to know how to fix things yourself. Comes in handy." David watched in silence for a moment, feeling oddly inadequate. Here was a boy barely in his teens, exhibiting a level of competence and independence that David, a grown man, lacked in this situation. After several minutes, Aaron stood, brushing his hands on his jeans. "All set," he said with a grin. "You're good to go." David reached for his wallet instinctively. Pulling out a few crisp bills, he extended them toward Aaron. "Here, for your trouble." Aaron took a step back, shaking his head. No thanks, he said simply. David frowned. Come on, take it. You earned it. Aaron smiled. The kind of genuine, open smile that David rarely encountered in his world of business meetings and polished facades. I didn't do it for money, Aaron said. Just wanted to help. Before David could respond, Aaron gave a small wave and turned, walking back down the road in the direction he had come. David stood there, the bill still in his hand, watching the boy until his figure disappeared into the horizon. Back in the driver's seat, David felt a strange mix of emotions. Gratitude, certainly, but also discomfort. He wasn't used to acts of kindness that came without strings attached. It unsettled him, the simplicity of it. He drove away, but the encounter lingered in his mind, replaying in vivid detail. That evening, as he sat across from his wife, Rachel, at their dinner table, he recounted the story. This kid helped me today, he said, pushing his fork through his salad. Changed the tire. Wouldn't take a dime for it. Rachel looked up, intrigued. Really? That's unusual. David nodded. Yeah, it was strange. I offered him money, and he just walked away. Said he didn't do it for the money. Rachel smiled faintly. Sounds like he has good values. Maybe you should go back and thank him properly. David hesitated, her suggestion striking a chord. Maybe I will, he said quietly. The idea stayed with him through the night, and by morning, he felt an inexplicable urge to act on it. He told Rachel he was going to find the boy. She gave him a curious look, but didn't question his decision. David retraced his route, the morning light casting a golden glow over the fields. The road felt less oppressive now, almost familiar. As he neared the area where he'd broken down, he slowed, scanning the surroundings. A modest house came into view, set back from the road with a sagging porch and peeling paint. Something told him this was the place. He parked his car and approached the front door, knocking firmly. A woman answered, her expression cautious, but not unfriendly. Can I help you? She asked, her voice soft. David cleared his throat. I'm looking for Aaron, he said. He helped me yesterday with my car. The woman's eyes softened, and she called over her shoulder. Aaron, someone's here for you. A moment later, Aaron appeared, his face lighting up with recognition. Oh, hey, mister, he said with a grin. David smiled back. I wanted to thank you properly for what you did yesterday. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Aaron shrugged. It was no big deal, he said, his tone as casual as before. David shook his head. It was a big deal to me. Is there anything I could do for you? For your family? Aaron hesitated, glancing at his mother, who stood quietly nearby. She gave him a slight nod of encouragement. Well, Aaron said slowly, how about breakfast? We don't have much, but you're welcome to join us. David was taken aback by the invitation, but something about the boy's earnestness compelled him to accept. All right, he said, stepping inside. As he crossed the threshold into their home, David couldn't shake the feeling that this was the start of something he didn't fully understand, but he was willing to find out. David stepped into the modest home, his polished loafers clicking softly against the creaky wooden floor. The air inside was warm, carrying the faint aroma of coffee and something savory cooking in the kitchen. The house was small but full of life, mismatched furniture, a few faded family photos on the walls, and a sense of home that felt unfamiliar yet comforting to him. Aaron's mother, a petite woman with kind eyes and tired hands, smiled politely. I'm Mary, she said, wiping her hands on a towel before extending one toward David. It's nice to meet you. David Parker, he replied, shaking her hand. Thank you for having me. She gestured toward the dining table, a small wooden piece that had clearly seen its share of meals and memories. Please, have a seat. Breakfast is almost ready. David nodded, taking a seat across from Aaron, who was already sitting and fidgeting with a napkin. You didn't have to invite me in. You know, David said, glancing at Aaron. But I appreciate it. Aaron shrugged. It's no big deal. We always have extra. And you look like you could use a break. David chuckled softly, unsure of what to make of the boy's frankness. Not many people would think that way. Mary returned with a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and a small pile of sausages. placing it in front of David. "It's simple, but we hope you enjoy it," she said, her voice carrying a quiet warmth. David looked down at the meal, something stirring in him that he couldn't quite name. "It looks great. Thank you." As they ate, David found himself drawn into the rhythm of the conversation at the table. Aaron talked animatedly about school and his interest in mechanics, sharing how he'd learned to fix things from his late father. David listened intently, surprised by how much the boy's stories fascinated him. It wasn't the kind of conversation he was used to, no business jargon, no hidden agendas, just genuine exchanges. "So," Mary asked, breaking a lull in the conversation, "what brought you to this area? Not many people pass through here unless they have a reason." David hesitated, his fork hovering over his plate. "I had a meeting scheduled," he said finally. "Important business deal. That's why I was on the road yesterday." Mary nodded thoughtfully. "Did you make it?" "I did," David admitted. "Barely." "Good," Aaron chimed in. "Would have been a shame if that flat tire had messed things up for you." David smiled. "It might have, if not for you." The meal continued, and David felt himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. The simplicity of the home and the warmth of its occupants seemed to chip away at the guarded persona he usually wore. By the time the plates were cleared, he felt a strange sense of belonging he couldn't quite explain. "Thank you," David said as Mary collected his plate. "This was more than I expected." Mary waved a hand dismissively. "It's nothing. We're happy to share." David stood, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Still, I want to do something for you. Your kindness, it's not something I encounter often." Aaron glanced at his mother, then back at David. "We don't need much," he said honestly. "But, the roof's been leaking when it rains. Maybe you could help with that." Mary shot Aaron a look, but David raised a hand. "That's a start," he said. "I'd be happy to take care of it." Mary hesitated, her pride warring with practicality. "We've managed so far," she said softly. "But if you're serious—" "I am," David interrupted, his tone firm. "Consider it done." Aaron grinned, clearly pleased. "Thanks, mister. That'd mean a lot." As David prepared to leave, Aaron walked him to the door. "Why'd you come back?" "Anyway," the boy asked, his tone curious. David paused, looking down at Aaron. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," he admitted. "The way you helped me without expecting anything in return, it's not something I'm used to." Aaron tilted his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Well, my dad always said helping people doesn't cost a thing. It's just what you're supposed to do." David nodded slowly, the boy's words settling over him like a blanket. "Your dad must have been a good man." "The best," Aaron said simply. David extended his hand, and Aaron shook it firmly. "I'll be in touch about the roof," David said. "And thank you again." Aaron nodded. "Take care, Mr. Parker." As David walked back to his car, he felt lighter somehow, as if a burden he hadn't known he was carrying had been lifted. He glanced back at the house, its weathered exterior seeming less humble now, more like a beacon of something he hadn't realized he was missing. For the first time in a long while, David felt a spark of something he couldn't quite name. Maybe it was purpose, maybe it was connection. Whatever it was, he knew he wasn't ready to let it go. Over the next week, David stayed true to his word. He contacted a local contractor and arranged for the roof repairs to be done at Aaron's house. He didn't tell Mary or Aaron about the extent of his plans, but he made sure the crew would handle everything thoroughly. When he visited again to oversee the work, Mary seemed hesitant but grateful. "You really didn't have to do all this," Mary said, standing on the porch while the crew worked. The noise of hammers and saws filled the air as David leaned against his car, watching the progress. "I wanted to," David replied simply. "It's the least I can do." Aaron was thrilled. He stood nearby, watching the workers with fascination, asking questions about tools and techniques. David couldn't help but smile at the boy's curiosity. It reminded him of himself at that age, always eager to learn, always seeking answers. Somewhere along the way, though, David realized he had lost that spark. As the repairs neared completion, David found himself visiting the family more frequently. It wasn't just about the roof anymore. He enjoyed the simplicity of their lives, the honesty in their conversations. Aaron often talked about his dreams of becoming a mechanic and opening his own repair shop one day. David listened, offering advice and encouragement. One evening, as the sun set and the workers packed up their tools, David and Aaron sat on the porch steps, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. "You've done a lot for us, Mr. Parker," Aaron said, his voice quiet, "more than we ever expected." David looked at the boy, his chest tightening. "You helped me first, Aaron, and you didn't expect anything in return. That kind of kindness, it changes people." Aaron grinned. "Well, I guess we're even now." David laughed softly. "Not quite. There's still more I'd like to do." Aaron tilted his head, curious. "Like what?" "You mentioned wanting to open a repair shop one day." David said, "I think we can make that happen." Aaron's eyes widened. "You mean it?" "I do," David said firmly. "It won't be easy, but I'm willing to help you get started when you're ready." Aaron didn't know what to say. His excitement was evident, but so was his disbelief. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. David nodded, patting Aaron on the shoulder. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, Aaron. I just want to help you get there." Months passed, and the bond between David and Aaron's family grew stronger. The roof was fixed, but David didn't stop there. He arranged for small renovations around the house, ensuring it was safe and comfortable. Mary protested at first, but David's persistence eventually won her over. In return, David found himself transformed by the experience. His visits to Aaron's family became the highlight of his week, a stark contrast to the high-stress meetings and endless deadlines of his corporate life. He started questioning the things he once thought were important, the relentless pursuit of wealth and status, and began valuing connection, community, and kindness. One evening, as David sat with Mary and Aaron around their kitchen table, he shared a thought that had been lingering in his mind. "You know," he began, "I think meeting you was the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Mary smiled, her eyes soft with gratitude. "I could say the same. You've done so much for us, David, more than we could ever repay." "There's no need to repay me," David said. "You've given me something I didn't even know I was missing. You reminded me what it means to care, to truly care, without expecting anything in return." Aaron nodded thoughtfully. "That's what my dad used to say. Helping others helps you, too." David's heart swelled with emotion. Aaron's simple wisdom had a way of cutting through the noise, grounding him in a way nothing else had. He knew this wasn't just a chance encounter on a dusty road. This was something deeper, something meant to happen. As the night wore on, David made his way to the door, saying his goodbyes. Aaron walked him out, the crisp night air cool against their skin. "You really think I can open my own shop one day?" Aaron asked, his voice filled with a mix of hope and doubt. "I don't just think it," David replied, meeting Aaron's gaze. "I know it. You got what it takes, Aaron, and I'll be there to help you every step of the way." Aaron smiled, the kind of smile that lights up a room. "Thanks, Mr. Parker." David chuckled. "Call me David." As he drove away, David felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had started this journey as a man defined by his achievements, his wealth, and his position. But now, he realized none of that mattered as much as the connections he made, the lives he touched. Aaron's act of kindness had changed everything. It wasn't just a flat tire on a country road. It was the beginning of a journey, one that reminded David of the beauty of humanity and the power of giving. And as he headed back to the city, he knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a story he'd carry with him forever. Thank you so much for watching this incredible story of kindness and humility. It reminds us all that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the most profound impact. If you were moved by today's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more inspiring stories with you soon.